Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Okay, so the next image... Good, laughing is good. If we're laughing, we know we're doing it right. The next image is called listening versus hearing.
Yeah.
And so the image is, and feel free to cough as loudly as you need.
I'm not coughing.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I'm assuming that's your hand.
It is my hand.
Okay. Holding up a construction made out of what looks like to be paper, like a sort of brown paper. And it's a 3D construction. So let's just say I was making on a computer a 3D rendering of what an ear could look like in the kind of, not in the hyper real, but in the more kind of like little boxy shaped panels or whatever. That's kind of what it would look like. But here it is. So the size of the sculpture is about, let's just say as big as a large loaf of bread. And what's neat is the light that hits the ear gives it extra shape. So it's a 3D ear to begin with, but it gives it extra shape. And the angle that it's being held at, like to the background, is a whole bunch of these like older looking Hong Kong style walk-ups that have like maybe 10 floors or something. And it's almost as if somebody's holding up the ear of one of these buildings, is metaphorical ears or whatever. But it's an interesting sculpture. It's an interesting image. Did I notice that ear on the wall?
Yeah, I think you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So listening versus hearing.
Mm. So when my husband and I were first married, I one day had an argument with him, surprisingly. You know, married couples do argue.
They do, yes. Yeah.
And he's Cantonese, and he told me, I said, "You're not listening to me." And he said, "I hear you. It's the same word in Cantonese." Ting is listening and hearing. Now, I mean, obviously there's subtleties. And he was trying to win an argument semantically. Sure. But it made me think a lot over the years about how we hear so much, but we rarely listen.
Okay. I'm listening to you.
Oh, thank you. And doing work with Hong Kong Stories and the storytelling work that I do with the community that we have around that, one of the principles that we teach when we're teaching storytelling to people is that the most important person in the room when you're telling a story is your audience. It's never you.
Sure.
And that's the hardest principle to get across to people because they're like, I have a message. I have something to say. And it's hard to get around people that if your audience is not interested or not with you, then you're just speaking to the void.
Right. Absolutely.
So I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she said, I was at this. She's a foreigner as well. And doesn't speak Cantonese, but she's working in a Cantonese school. And they had these lectures from the school officials that don't really have anything to do with day-to-day teaching, but they come in once a year and do these long theoretical, this is how we should be teaching. And everybody has to go, the teaching staff has to attend. Yeah. And she turned to her colleague once and said, could you just translate the gist of it? And her colleague apparently looked very shocked and slightly taken aback and uncomfortable. And she said, that means I have to listen. Like, I have to tell you what's going on. I have to actually be listening. I'm not listening. I hear it, but I'm not listening.
Yeah.
And I think we are spending a lot of time with everything that's happened in Hong Kong, listening only to ourselves and not hearing only our own voices and not listening to what's happening around us. And that goes back to identity and community and what I'm struggling with at the moment. Trying to find a way of listening and do the storytelling in order to give a voice and be able to teach that. But the more I listen to people's stories, the more I want to listen to more stories and want to give more platforms. So as you know, you probably already guessed, I'm very excited about podcasting in Hong Kong, and I'm very excited about the explosion of podcasts that I can listen to in the English language because I'm not really great at Cantonese.
Wow. Well, your Cantonese is years ahead of mine, so it's respect.
But that's what the ear is, and that ear is actually, it's filled with soundproofing foam, and you can stick a little microphone in it. And when we have Hong Kong Stories shows, I tend to put it up on a stand with a little sign underneath it that says, "We are listening. And you can go up as an audience member either in the interval or after the show and give a review or talk about what you want. And I had this dream of being able to build a portable podcasting booth with the giant ear that I can put on the back of a bicycle and cycle around Hong Kong and just let people talk.
Wow.
Because I feel like there's not enough spaces for people to be able to express how they feel and say what they want and give their opinion without necessarily... What's wonderful about audio is there's not necessarily a visual element to it. It can be a lot more anonymous.
Yeah.
So this is my dream. One day I'll have a little pedal podcasting booth and I'll just cycle around and let people talk.
I love that you're crazy looking, insane looking. But that's so good. So let me describe...
What's crazy looking about that? I don't understand.
Nothing. No, not at all. Look, everybody's bent. Everybody's a bit crazy. Everybody's a bit idiosyncratic, and that's what makes it interesting, right? So everybody's stories... So
I think that's perfectly normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the podcast, how old is the podcast?
We started in 2016, but it didn't really I didn't really put in much attention to it until 2017. The reason behind it is not to get a large number of listeners and things like that, but to really, it was so that our storytellers could, play their stories for their mom. Sure. Or somebody who's not in the rooms. We sell out most of our shows, so somebody can't get a ticket. Well, your story will be up in the podcast.
Amazing.
And it's been wonderful. We have, over 170,000 downloads, so we're quite comfortable with that. I think,
okay, so here's my external perception.
That's my little brag, right? That was
you can brag. You should brag. People should brag. The podcast is amazing.
We have a lot of fun with it, too.
It does. I'm sure. No, you listen to the podcast and you can hear the fact that there's an audience. And then do all the episodes follow roughly the same format where you're the kind of, you introduce.
Yeah, I'm the host.
You're not really in the way. You kind of sit there, you kind of sort of serve it up, and then the person, are they reading or are they speaking? It sounds like they're reading it.
We tell without notes. So they're usually in front of a live audience telling without notes. If you hear one that's without the audience behind it, it means something's gone wrong with the recording.
Yeah.
But I don't want to lose the story. So it's like this, do you record it with the flat, no audience, or do you record it? There's a few that are recorded without, and they sound much more like reading. Because
Okay, so maybe I fell on one of those, but I listened to a few of them, and for the people in Hong Kong, we understand how tumultuous it's been with the protests, and then with the big changes with the security law, and even people saying, you shouldn't even say the S word or the SL word. It's like that which shall not be named. So
Voldemort.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so the people getting people in a room and having them just tell their story, whatever it is, in open environment, which is not threatening, which is safe, is extremely powerful. And
really, really fun.
Yeah, you hear the people laughing. It's really great.
So good that we have the kind of general idea of starting it was that the two guys who founded it were sick of people coming up to them and saying, "So what do you do?" Right. Which is the first thing people usually ask in Hong Kong, right? Well, it's everywhere. Where are you from, or what do you do? Yeah. And they were like, "We need something else." So we have this venue where people get to know you through your stories. And if you're a multiple storyteller, some of us are. We had one incident where a friend of mine who didn't know this storyteller, who was a multiple storyteller, kind of went up to her after her show and said, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" And then she came to me afterward and said, "Oh my goodness, I was so embarrassed because I forgot I didn't actually know her." Oh, right. She said, "We've never met." Yeah. Well, I think that happens. Isn't that wonderful that you can go up to somebody and say, "Oh, you know what? My husband eats apples in bed too." Yeah. For sure. Which is very disconcerting, but is also it's a great way of. I mean, I'm very friendly, so I definitely attack people all the time. Isn't it wonderful to have that Canadian card in some way?
I'm just friendly and polite. Sure.
Yeah, it's just this license to be able to talk to anybody. Sure. And if they go, "What are you all about?" You say, "I'm Canadian." They go, "Oh, okay, that's normal."
Right. That's good. I have never used that one, but now I will.
Oh, I lived in England for a number of years, and it was my passport to being able to be not have to follow the social norms of not speaking to people.
So Oh, there's so many places to go. We're going to move on to the next photograph. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting